Hello and welcome back to Dynamics Unplugged and the latest edition in our series, Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain Management, Dynamics A to Z. Today we're back with the letter T, and T is for transport days. Under the inventory management module setup and distribution, we have transport days. Transport days are very, very useful for entering the time it takes to transport items between warehouses and addresses. Now, I know what you're thinking. Doesn't that get covered by lead time? And the answer is kind of no. If I'm wanting to have an offset between my ship dates on sales orders and the receipt date on sales orders, which represents when the customer receives it, I can do that automatically with transport days rather than manipulating that manually. I can also handle transport days for internal transfer orders, and these can be assigned at many levels. Here you see in my sandbox, I have a lot of transport days for shipping out of certain warehouses to states. So this first line, shipping out of warehouse 11. If I'm shipping to Alaska, king salmon in this postcode, it takes 4 days. If I'm shipping out of warehouse 13 to Alabama, it takes 3 days and so on. So I can really set up a lot here. If you're using a full-blown TMS module, this might be handled. But this functionality existed well before transportation management in D365. You can use it with sales orders, whether you're using transportation management or not. You don't have to use warehouse management even to utilize this functionality. It can be used with basic warehousing as well. So really 2 ways to control this. One is our shipping point is always going to be one of our warehouses, but our receiving point is configurable. It can be an address. So when you're shipping to a specific address, really useful for customers. Or it can be to a warehouse. So we can have warehouse to warehouse transport. So for example, here my shipping warehouse is 32, my receiving warehouse is warehouse 11. If I create a transfer order between them, I'll have a 5-day offset between my ship and receipt date. So you can set up those warehouse to warehouse rules, or you can make it a warehouse to address rule, and that address can include as much or as little information as you want it to, like this top line that gets very granular versus all these other lines that only go to the state. This could be for handling country to country as well. All of my examples are purely based out of the USA, but I could have transport days to ship overseas. This is important if you're doing intercompany, for example, and you do a lot of shipments overseas by boat. It might 2 weeks. Having those transport days can really help offset that. Let's go ahead and take a look at this in action. I am going to create a sales order and we'll give a customer a new address in Alabama and make sure this transport days gets calculated correctly. So we're going to be shipping out of warehouse 13 to Alabama. All right, I now have a shell of an order. This one happens to be going to New Hampshire. We're going to give this customer a new delivery address. And we'll start to fill in the details. For Alabama, we'll say it's going to Billingsley. I probably should assign my zip code first here. And we'll put in 123 Main Street as our main delivery address. Click OK. So now we have the address that matches our transport days, but we need our shipping point, which is going to be out of site 1, warehouse 13. You can already see it reflected here in my header. I have a requested ship date of 4/7, and I have requested receipt date of 4/10. That's 3 days. If I were to change this, the 28th, my requested receipt date will move with it to 5/1. Your transport days will always automatically do that calculation. If you do not configure transport days, those days are always going to default to the same value, meaning it doesn't reflect any actual transport. You'd have to manually manipulate a receipt date to be able to tell the customer when it will arrive at their warehouse versus just when it ships from ours. So transport days are really, really useful. Now back on a transport day setup, I want to take a quick look at one of those interplant transfers. We have shipping warehouse of 32, receiving warehouse of 11, transport days are 5. Let's go ahead and make sure that that is also valid by creating a transfer order and taking a look at what dates we get. So I've entered in my from warehouse of 32, my to warehouse of 11. You can see immediately the ship date and receipt date have updated. My ship date of 4/7, my receipt date of 4/12. And once again, just like our last example, if I change that ship date, my receipt date's going to change automatically with it. And that's it for today's session on Dynamics 365. Dynamics A to Z in finance and supply chain management, a quick and dirty demo on transport days, and we'll see you tomorrow for the letter U.